Hello and welcome to Wrestling with Anime. I'm Paul,
And I'm Dave.
and this week we are discussing both Forbidden Door 2024 as well as an anime called OddTaxi. Well, at least the first four
Yeah,
episodes of OddTaxi. We didn't
yeah.
watch the entire thing because it's like 13 episodes long.
Yeah, still be interesting, but still kind of the case of, it's good enough to at least get the door open for you.
What did you want to start with, David?
I think it's starting up with the match because with everything that you were kind of saying, this was a full selection with what they decided to go along with.
All right, so let us start off with AEW and New Japan Pro Wrestling's Forbidden Door 2024. We only watched the main card. We did not watch the pre-show because the main card is long enough.
Yeah, yeah.
So, first match through the curtain, we see Hechicero against MJF, who you're familiar with MJF. You would not be familiar with Hechicero.
No, it was a case of I recognized one of them, but I didn't recognize the other. But it was still kind of the case of I remember you. I also don't like you very much. And
Yes.
this match did not help.
But MJF's so funny. He's so good. And
On the
Hechicero's
one hand,
great.
I can understand with the whole match, it was just simply kind of the case of at this particular moment in time, and especially with what I've experienced with him in the past, the last thing I needed to see from him is all that bloody showboating.
But that's the point, David. So what did
Uh,
so I know you don't like MGF, but what did you think of Hechicero? Because
It was very good, especially within that match. With honestly, both of them, just with their technical skill and acrobatics, with a lot of the match that went on, and especially with Hecusero, excuse the pronunciation. Just it was still a fairly good match, though. Still not super happy with how things kind of ended out with how it sort of went along with it, but again, it was one of the cases that throughout most of the show, it was just kind of the case of I can appreciate the match going on with all the stuff that was going on, but there's a lot of context I'm missing.
okay, there's one thing I want to bring up in this match that Hechicero does that I'm like, I've never seen that before, and it's super cool. He does this
Mm,
move. I don't. He has a name for it, but I don't remember what it's called.
mm.
He grabs MGF and he puts him in like a chicken wing, so it's like arms up behind his back, and then he starts
Oh,
like spinning him around
yeah.
like a giant swing, and then turns it into a backbreaker. And I'm like, that's so fucking cool. I've never seen that before.
Hmm. Okay. Sort of the case of either adding two moves together or more so the case of just it hasn't happened.
He put like three moves together and somehow made it work. I'm like, that's great. Uh, Fair warning for anybody who's like a big CMLL fan. I know nothing about CMLL, and I know very little about New Japan. Like, I've watched a bit of New Japan, but I've never seen any of CMLL. So this is my first exposure to, or early exposure to a lot of these people, because I've seen Hechicero have like a handful of matches in AEW.
Hmm.
But I am not an expert on any kind of lucha libre.
Hmm.
Alrighty, so we end up the match ends with MJF beating Hechicero with the Heat Seeker, which is a move I love. It's that second rope assisted pile driver. I love that. It's so simple and looks so good.
On the one hand, I can somewhat agree, but also kind of the case of I'm not helping happy he won, but still,
Yes. Let us move on to the next match, which was a trios match, which is the Elite, which is Matthew Jackson, Nicholas Jackson, and Kazuchika Okada against the Acclaimed, which is Anthony Bowens and Max Caster, and Hiroshi Tanahashi joining them for this match.
yeah, yeah.
So, what did you think of this?
Oh boy. If I had concerns with the people that were wrestling in the last match, oh boy, do I have a bunch of concerns with the people within this match. Because just with past experiences and whatnot, I'm sure you understand my uh, thoughts on the Young Bucks with all the stuff that they kind of gone through.
Yeah, you for some reason don't like the Bucks, even though I assumed you would, because they're very like flippy and athletic and fun to watch.
I can definitely appreciate their athleticism and acrobatics and whatnot from there, but oh god, their angle with all the stuff in there, just ugh. And then more so with I believe the title of their crew is the Acclaimed of the two rappers that is in there.
Yes. Well, one of them's a
Uh
rapper, the other one isn't. But yes, I know who you mean.
yeah, it's the case of it's there. There's the little bit of work that he can kind of do that it can pass off decently enough. I don't have much experience with rappers, but it's kind of the case of it's still kind of either playing at an angle, but it wouldn't be counted as too much professional. I can understand, but still also the case of not too much within my wheelhouse. But their partner within there, if I got the name right, it was the
Hiroshi Tanahashi.
Harosha Tanahashi. Thank you. With him though, he was pretty much just like you're pretty much the only one person that I'm rooting for within this match because there's Rainmaker, um
Kazuchika Okada.
yes, thank you. That was there, but I believe it's the case of I've seen a match or two with the stuff that you've gone over with him, and it's been a bumpy road with the couple things that he's decided to work with and has done in the past. It's sort of left me of mm, good enough wrestler, but still the case of there's some things I don't like about you.
Yeah, so Okada left New Japan a couple months ago and has now gone to AEW full time. Hiroshi Tanahashi is still a wrestler, but he's also the president of New Japan, so he's running that company. And they've had a rivalry like in New Japan that's like 10 years old. Like they've been feuding off and on for a long time.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes, so I thought this was a very good match.
It definitely was. Just with all the stuff that sort of went on with it, there was still the case of, God, there's only one particular person I like within this match, but especially with all the work that they actually did within it, it was fairly decent. And I'm actually fairly surprised that there weren't too many, uh, I say scummy, but just sort of uh, pile on sort of situations that I would have thought of too bad within that. There was definitely enough sort of team attacks, other sorts of things that they did within there, but nothing that I would have said like, "Oh, ref, what you doing? They're all attacking one guy."
Yes. So the Elite end up beating the Acclaimed and Hiroshi Tanahashi,
Nice.
and the Young Bucks make a point to feature their new Reebok pumps, which are out in stores now, by pumping them up multiple times before they do a super kick.
Yeah, yeah. It's kind of the case of I can understand, but still kind of the case of, oh my dear God, just
All right. So the next match, I figured you might go for this one. It's Shingo Takagi against Bryan Danielson, and it is a first round match in the men's Owen Hart Cup tournament.
yes. So with this particular one, there's always the bit of the case of I kind of fluctuate between the particular styles of wrestling that were kind of around, and especially once this match got started as like, this is a grappler match, and sort of like, is this gonna be decent? But not as whole, and especially kind of the cards that they do before each of the matches, they kind of give a little bit of history, some of the stuff that's kind of been going on. Again, excuse me for not getting the details exact with this, but it's the case of with both of these wrestlers, they've kind of picked up the title of Dragon.
Yes.
Uh, with Brian Danielson having the title American Dragon, and then uh,
Shingo
still familiar
Takagi.
to my yeah, it was Shinigo Tataki having the title as well. And sort of the case of okay, having somewhat of a spin within this match and whatnot from there. And I think on whole it turned out fairly decent. Like it's still not a style that it's kind of one of the tough ones of not too much action sort of going on. You kind of either have to pay attention and or enjoy that sort of style. But even then, it was still had that force, and they did fairly well within the entire match to keep it interesting for me.
They beat the shit out of each other
Yeah,
for like
yeah.
20 minutes. It was great. Um, I do appreciate because Brian Danielson announced, um, like, or I think in like January that this is his last year as a full time pro wrestler.
Yes.
So they're kind of pushing the whole thing of like, well, if you win this tournament, you'll get one more shot to become world champion before you semi-retire. So I like that, and he ends up winning this match with. Oh, what does he beat? I don't remember what the submission he beats Tagagi with is, but he stomps his fucking head in at one point, and I love
Yeah,
that spot. It's so
yeah.
good.
Again, it was one of the cases of something I had to double check within one of the matches, but again, he got him in a end hold, and it was the case of wait, was it the case of he was knocked out or did he tap out? I wasn't too sure.
It was a verbal tap out.
Ah, okay. Well, that's
Yeah.
sort of the case.
Moving on, this is the match I figured you'd have the most questions about. So next up is Timeless Tony Storm, accompanied by Luther, against Mina Shirakawa, with Mariah May at ringside in support of both participants. And this is for the AEW Women's World Title.
Yes.
You have
Yeah.
questions, I assume.
Yeah, quite honestly, like even with the card that kind of gave a decent enough sort of explanation, it's like I have so many questions. I don't think my brain can contain them. But it was just kind of the one big thing at the front of my mind is like, dear God, this is silly.
Yeah, and it's great.
Like in some cases I could supposedly understand, and definitely there have been far worse things. I also supposedly thank you for that torture.
So, to explain a little, Timeless Tony Storm, um, how did she become timeless again? I think she got a bump on the head or something. I think that's what
One of those,
happened.
one of
And
those sorts of cases.
and then she thought she now believes that she's a 30s movie star and all of her segments are shot in black and white. And don't ask me to explain Mina Shirakawa because I know nothing about Stardom, other than that Stardom has the best names for their titles. Oh my god, it's so true though. Like it's you know what? I'm just gonna pull up a list of some of their titles because it's so amazing. Um, let's go to Stardom. Okay, championships. So in no particular order, there's the World of Stardom Championship, Wonder of Stardom Championship, Goddesses of Stardom Championship, Artist of Stardom Championship, High Speed Championship. There's the I guess those are like the main ones. But I just love their like crazy. They have a Cinderella tournament.
Mm.
I love the a lot of these Japanese companies name their belts great things, and I'm all for it.
Mm.
Yes. So, what did you think of this match, Dave? Other than all the questions you had.
And again, I think I'm fairly content with those questions not being answered with how the whole match sort of went out. Um, but I think on whole it was decent enough with both the wrestlers. They knew what they were doing, and for all the particular sort of case with it and how the match sort of went on, it was fairly impressive for all the stuff that they showed off and did from there. Um, and still, on whole, it ended well enough with respect between two ladies from there, and then the concern of the third for her friend and her mentor uh, getting along, going along with the match. It's like, hooray, happy ending, but still kind of the marvelous case of you could have fixed this part easier, but again, there wouldn't be a show. But nevertheless, uh,
Yes. Timeless Tony Storm might be the best gimmick going in AEW because it's just so funny to me.
I think so. It's kind of one of those cases of it fits well enough, and there's so much material you can kind of go with going in the 30s with the style that sort of goes on from there. It draws familiarity to another person that's gone similar sort of route, or what more the cartoon old black and white sort of style that brought a lot of familiarity between the two. It's just a case of okay, another person sort of taking this angle on it, but going more the old 30s actors sort of route with it.
I think it works so well because there's nothing else like her on the show, so she stands out.
Most assuredly, yes.
Alrighty. Next up, we have Orange Cassidy versus Zack Sabre Jr. You should be familiar with both of these fellows. I'm pretty sure you've seen both of them.
I'm not sure. Like, actually watching them wrestle and whatnot from there was the mild flashes of, I think I know this person, but definitely with their cards when they came in and whatnot from there, it was the case of, I do not believe I know these people.
Okay. So, what did you think of Orange Cassidy? Because he has a very unique gimmick.
I'm not too sure if I appreciate it with just the thing. I can understand it well enough, but it was still kind of the case of, okay, it's a thing, but I'm just not sure if I appreciate it or not.
Okay.
Just left me a little confused.
Okay. What about Zack Sabre Jr.?
It was kind of the case of either mistaken identity, because I'm not sure if it's either a person I recognized or he was just a particular person that's changed his style again from what sort of stuff he's done in the past.
No, he's always had a very similar style.
Okay, so it may have been a case of look-alike syndrome with another particular wrestler that maybe isn't on the card or hasn't been, haven't seen a match from him recently.
I think you've seen Zack Sabre Jr., but it would have been quite a while ago, like in one of our early episodes.
Okay, one of those sorts of cases.
Yeah. So I think they have a very good match here. One of the things I like about Orange Cassidy that I wish more people had is a unique pin.
Okay.
Because he has, what does he call it? He has, it's not The Last Supper, that's Darby Allin.
Mm-hmm,
I forget what Orange is called, but both of them have like this really unique way of going for a pin that they bust out every once in a while, and I'm like, I love that. It's such a cool idea of like, oh, a regular pin isn't going to work. I'm going to try something that you've probably never seen before.
Okay.
And I like that.
Yeah, in those sort of cases, it definitely makes sense. I sort of question whether or not that would either bring up issues or concerns with trying to do pins that way and other sorts of things. But again, giving a particular sort of surprise for a pin, it's like, wait a minute, what are you doing?
Yeah, because Darby does one where he like grabs your legs and like, I don't even know how to explain it, but he does this thing where like hooks your legs and like rolls back, and it's really cool because it's like, I've never seen anyone do that before.
Yeah.
So Zack Sabre Jr. defeats Orange Cassidy by submission. Moving on, we have a trios match. This is Samoa Joe, Hook, and Katsuyori Shibata against Chris Jericho, Big Bill, and Jeff Cobb with Brian Keith at ringside. What did you think of this?
I think with this one, it turned out fairly good. And surprisingly enough, it was a little bit different from the previous trio match that we had within this particular card. But it was also kind of nice that, especially with the two teams, they had a couple of heavyweights that got into the match together.
Oh, they had some big boys in this one.
With that one. And it was still the case of, yeah, that works decently well. And it was a kind of decent matchup of body sizes, but also particular styles with a couple of wrestlers on either team. And it worked out fairly well with the match.
I have two big takeaways from this match. One, I just want to see Samoa Joe against Jeff Cobb for like 20 minutes. Just two big boys beating the shit out of each other.
I
The
suppose.
the other one is Hook should do Chris Jericho's Judas effect because he does it like 10 times better. It's that spinning back elbow that he does at the end of the match, and I'm like, oh, that actually looked really good when you did it.
That's what that. I think it might also be his age. Like, I'm not exactly sure exactly, but he still might be in his late 20s or so. Or
Oh, Hook's probably like early 20s. He's quite
okay,
25.
still fairly young, still fairly young in comparison to most everyone else within the match. And it was the case of how young are they getting these particular people in, just from the look of it. But no, on whole, it turned out fairly good, especially with him within the match to see all the particular stuff he did. And again, I can't exactly compare with the move that you were mentioning from there. I saw it and whatnot from there, but still kind of the case of, eh,
Yeah, my thing
don't.
is like when Hook does it, it's super like quick and it looks really impactful. And when
Mm,
Jericho does it, it looks like he's moving through wet cement.
mm,
And it's like that. I don't think you could knock a fly out with that move.
mm.
Um, yeah, so I wish Jeff Cobb was around more often because fuck, he's good. But yeah, so Samoa Joe, Hook, and Katsuyori Shibata to defeat Jericho, Big Bill, and Jeff Cobb. And Taz is a proud papa outside.
Yeah,
In case you don't know, Hook is his son.
yeah, yeah.
Okay, I wasn't sure if you knew. So, okay. Next, we have a ladder match for the vacant AEW TNT Championship, which is vacated because Adam Copeland, aka Edge, broke his ankle jumping off a cage when he's like 50 years old.
You know, as you do.
Yes. So we have Konosuke Takeshita, Mark Briscoe, Dante Martin, Leo Rush, El Phantasmo, and Jack Perry doing battle for this title.
Mhm.
What did you think of this match?
Mild insanity with the multitude of ladders, the particular things that sort of went on from there. Just mild insanity with all the particular things that they went on with.
Yeah, no,
Just
it's a fair like. I guess to me, I'm like, this is a pretty standard ladder match, but I don't know how many ladder matches you've seen.
yeah, it's one of the cases of I understand it, but also the case of they kind of covered a fairly decent amount of points. Like I can't exactly remember how many ladders were exactly on stage, but it was still a case of every one of the wrestlers had a ladder in hand and was ready to throw down. But case of they brought the tables out, they jumped off from the top rope instead of going for the prize or any sort of thing from that, and just sort of the case of, oh God, I've seen these from multiple ladder matches, but why does this seem more insane?
Fair enough. So, a couple of things I have for this one. Uh, Konosuke Takeshita is so freaking good. Why doesn't he have a title in AEW? Because he's so freaking good.
Hmm.
Every time I see Mark Briscoe on screen, I'm super happy, but also super sad. Dante Martin and Leo Rush need to have a long feud where they could just have matches together because they're great together. And why is El Phantasmo not in AEW more often?
They're most likely answers, but whether or not they're good enough explanations is most likely the question.
And Jack Perry would end up winning the TNT title here. And he is also part of the Elite with the Young Bucks and Kazuchika Okada.
Hmm.
Yes. We move on to our next match, which is a winner takes all for the AEW TBS Championship and New Japan Pro Wrestling Strong Women's Championship, which is, and I might pronounce her name wrong here because Stephanie Vacour versus Mercedes Monet.
Okay.
So, what did you think of this particular match?
It was sadly a little bit of a case of seeing a couple things at the start of the match. It worked out all right, but just with how it sort of went on, there were blips in the memory. It was one of the cases that I had to actually go back and try to rewatch the match again because I'm not sure if it was just either the amount of time with trying to go through the show or just other things throughout the day, but it was still a case of one of the matches that I couldn't keep track of any sort of thing that was going on.
I don't really blame you. I think the match is fine, and Mercedes gets a win, which she needed to get because she's fairly new to AEW
Mm,
and kind of needs to retain the title. And her getting the NJPW belt only is going to help New Japan because Stephanie Vicure recently signed with WWE.
mm.
I think it's fine. I don't think it's anything like incredible. And I'm like, I know that I'm sure both of these ladies can do better. It just feels like not. It just didn't click this time.
Yeah, pretty much the only one thing that kind of kept it was one of them was fairly colorful, the other one was dressed all in black, and just the fact that one of them had a little bit of color kept my somewhat attention. I am very sorry. I am supposedly dumb.
Alrighty. Next up, we have a match for the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship. John Moxley is defending against Tetsuya Naito.
Mm.
What did you think of this particular bout?
With that one, I thought it went fairly decent within all the particular stuff from there. Again, it was one of the cases of, especially with the bigger guys that are sort of going at it, there's only so much that they can do in comparison to the acrobatics that can be done in some of those cases. I also wondered if there was either specific context or other sorts of things within the story that they didn't mention within the card for this one, because there was one or two moments when the camera kind of did a close shot of one of the guys and they either had a concerning look or some other sort of thing that they were trying to act out, and it was sort of like, are they really trying to make this story heavy or
So the basic thing here is, how do I explain? Basically, Moxley comes into this match as the IWGP World Heavyweight Champion, which is the world title for New Japan. And I'm not going to explain why it's not called the New Japan title because that would take too long.
yeah, most likely.
Tetsuya Naito is kind of like is a super big deal for New Japan. He's one of their biggest stars.
Mm.
They have a major tournament coming up in New Japan. Oh, what's it called? What's their? They do a couple of tournaments every year.
Mm.
The G1. The G1's the one that's coming up. So the G1 Climax is this tournament that New Japan runs every year, where it's like, so it's like a round robin thing, where
Mm.
like the competitors are broken into blocks, and then you earn points for wins and different things, and then you move on in the tournament.
Mm.
And it's customary for the world champion to be a part of this tournament. However, there's no way that Moxley is going to do the G1 because AEW isn't going to let him go and work for 16 days straight for another company. So
Uh,
there's a bit of kind of like, I don't know if they ever actually say it on TV, but Naito is like, I need to win this to bring it back to New Japan to like withhold this, to like hold up this tradition.
uh,
Alrighty, so Tetsuya Naito ends up winning the IWGP World Heavyweight Championship in what I thought was a pretty good match. It's
mm.
nothing super crazy, but I thought that they worked really well together.
No, it was still kind of the case of uh, either with the cinematography and or the stuff that they did within the show that there was at least sort of the respect that you kind of showed within the match that played out from there, and still sort of had that gravitas, I think would be the word to show it off at the very least.
Yes, and now we come up to our main event of the evening, which is for the AEW World Championship. It is Will Ospreay challenges Swerve Strickland for the belt. Swerve Strickland will come out with Prince Nana, and there was a rapper with him, and I don't remember the person's name.
Okay, with him.
But that is not
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
Because we are getting Will Ospreay against Swerve Strickland in the main event of a pay-per-view, and the minute I heard that, I was like, shut up and take my money. Because I'm like, there's no way this isn't going to be good. So let me explain the story going into this match a little bit, because I don't know how well they do that.
No, especially with the card opening, it was just kind of the little flash shots of the guys coming in. I don't think there was too much of an explanation.
Okay, so the basic explanation, the feud basically has been, so Swerve has been kind of saying like, how do I, Osprey isn't like, he's not ready to be world champion. He doesn't have like enough of a mean streak in him to to beat him, because Swerve's kind of a bastard. He's like, he's not really like a bad, well, he kind of has become a bad guy, but he's not really a bad guy. More like he's just kind of like willing to do whatever it takes to win. He's kind of a bastard.
Nothing.
Whereas Will Ospreay is much more of like a traditional babyface, where he has like super cool flashy moves, and he does a lot of like really cool high flying stuff. And Will's thing is like, nah, I'm gonna fucking beat you and take your title. And then Swerve's like, nah, because you don't have that killer instinct, you're not going to. And then Swerve starts making remarks about Ospreay's family, and then Ospreay attacks him. And then now here we are. That's basically the build-up.
Yeah, yeah, that kind of tracks.
So, what did you think of this match?
I think it was fairly good. There was a little bit of distraction with, especially the rapper that came in as the side from there, kind of taking up a bit of the spotlight, shouting on the line. It usually isn't too bad with other matches I've seen in the past, with them either shouting on the back line to motivate or other sorts of things from there. I think the only one thing was near the end of the match was not so much the rapper, it was the either the manager or some other important person that was on oh shoot, name escapes me. The
Do you mean, is it Don Callis that comes out for Will Ospreay?
yes, it was that
Yeah.
for that. He brings out a screwdriver.
Yes. Okay. Let me explain. So, Don Callis has used this screwdriver a number of times. He's attacked Kenny Omega with it and a few other people. Basically, he's kind of been like the devil on Will Ospreay's shoulder, because Will's like, Ospreay used to do this move called the Tiger Driver 91. He stopped doing it because it almost, like, he had a match with Bryan Danielson and it almost severely injured Danielson, so he's like, I'm not going to do that, it's too risky, I don't want to hurt anyone. And then he lost a couple of important matches because he wouldn't bust it out. So Don Callis has been like, no, just fucking do it and win the title. Like, who cares if somebody else gets hurt? Like, you'll be the champion. So that's kind of been part of the story there as well.
Okay, adding to those sorts of stories as well. It was
Yes.
kind of one of the cases of, oh man, watching this match, seeing the to and fro of it, and then the guy brings out the screwdriver, and then I'm like, on the one hand, I should be concerned. On the other hand, I shouldn't be surprised. But on the third hand, it's like, what is happening?
Yes. So I really love this match. They have a very good match. Shocking, I know. But Swerve does manage to retain his title against Will Ospreay. So that ends AEW New Japan Pro Wrestling's Forbidden Door for this year. What did you think of the show, David?
I think on whole, with the entire show, it turned out fairly well. It was a little bit of the case of, oh god, I kind of lost interest partway through, since just with the amount of time I typically sort of have in typical week during the weekend and whatnot, don't exactly have enough time to really sit down and go through an entire show like that. But nevertheless, just with all the stuff I did see and went through with that, it was still fairly impressive. And in some cases, I can understand with you paying for the pay-per-view to go and see these ones.
Yes. Was there anybody on the show that really stood out to you? You're like, I want to see more of that person.
No particular person really comes to mind that I could say of. At the very least, it's still the cases of, I know that guy. I know this guy. I don't know you, but you did stuff impressively.
Okay. I'm a little surprised because I'm like, I feel like Will Ospreay is the kind of talent that like people who maybe don't know a ton of wrestling would go like, oh, that's really cool. But
Mm.
and also Swerve is one of those talents for me as well.
Yeah, I could see that. It's still also kind of the case of just with the amount of time or seeing the couple matches that I've seen so far, my understanding of wrestling, it's the case of I don't know if I've gotten well enough to actually go along with you and actually get a pay-per-view to see myself.
Fair enough. Alrighty, let us move on to the anime that we have for this time, which is called OddTaxi,
Yes.
which you suggested for me. So I apparently did not read the genre for this because I was expecting a comedy, and it is
Yeah,
not a comedy.
yeah, it was one of those particular things that they've done over the last little while of cases of they show it off as something incredibly cute, kitty, and something to give you all damn good feels until you actually get into the subject matter. In which case, ooh,
Yeah, so it's set in the world of anthropomorphic animals, and we have a taxi driver who is a walrus.
yes.
His name's Hiroshi. He kind of just doesn't like anyone,
Yeah, typical
which
kind of grump character.
I understand. And in the first episode, we hear something about a missing schoolgirl,
Yeah.
high school girl, but we don't really get anything else. Do we get anything else about that after the first episode? Like, I think it's
There
referenced a few times, but like, there's not huge like developments, is there?
there's little blips and points of information within the show of either person retelling the story of the high school girl being missing and or little bits and details about things, but it's kind of the case of if you're not specifically paying attention you'll probably miss it, and if you're not specifically remembering the specific details about it you'll probably miss details about the stuff that's going on. It's one of the particular things, especially within the 4 episodes that we watched, that's kind of, ooh, if this isn't really Paul's cup of tea he will be so lost.
I actually okay. So I was watching the first episode, and I get like 10 minutes in, and I'm like, this hasn't been funny yet.
One of those cases of seeing the little bits and information or seeing the opening and whatnot, and then get to the actual show of, ooh,
Well, and that's the thing, because the opening song is like super poppy and energetic, and I'm like, oh, we're in for a good time. And then the show starts, and I'm like, oh, this isn't poppy and fun. This is a mystery, which I was not expecting. However, once I understood what the show was, which again is entirely my own fault for not like reading the description of the show.
mm. And it's also the case with me that I knew bits and pieces of the show, but it's still kind of the case of I was a little bit lost too.
We so the first episode we have our main character Hoshi driving his and he's a hippopotamus, which I'm like, there's no way you can have a show with a main character who's a hippopotamus driving a taxi that isn't going to be funny. But apparently you can.
He's
Oh no, sorry,
there.
he's a walrus. The person he picks up is a hippo. My mistake.
Yes. Yeah, there you go.
I was like, there's no way that you can have a main character as a walrus taxi driver and it's not a comedy. But apparently you can. So he picks up this dwarf hippopotamus who
Yeah,
hopes of going viral on social media.
yeah, the marvelous thing of our time.
They get pulled over by two identical twin cops.
Yes.
And the driver tells him that he hasn't seen some gangster named Dobu, something like
Yes.
that. Then he drops off the student who accidentally leaves his cell phone in the taxi, and we find out that the selfie that the student took with the driver has gone somewhat viral. And then he ends up visiting a clinic to see a doctor and an alpaca nurse, and I'm
Mhm.
not sure why he's there.
The specific reason was he's been having some issues with insomnia.
Oh, okay. I couldn't remember that. Oh, also, he talks to someone who's living in his closet, but they don't respond. So I'm like, are they implying that, like, he took this high school girl? Because that's like, what's kind of implied, although it's never said.
It's one of them marvelous mysteries. Well, it's one of
Yes.
the cases of I've saw the particular trick, and I can supposedly spoil it, but I shall not.
Um, what else do we get here? Oh yeah, one of the cops takes the SD card from the driver's dash cam because he
Mm.
suspects that he is the one who kidnapped this girl. Um, oh yes, and then we meet his little Gibbon friend
Yes.
who lies about his annual income on a dating app, and
Yeah. Yeah.
um, that storyline is going to go places that I was like, what? What's going on here? And then the doctor is at it's like a ramen house or something, right?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah, okay. And they're alerted. He's alerted that some medications have gone missing, and I think they were like antipsychotics or something.
Yes.
Yes, and then oh yeah, and then the one cop gives the SD card to Dobu in exchange for a bribe.
Yes. That
So,
dirty cop.
yes, so that's kind of the first episode.
Yes, with all the particular threads that have been left dangling to supposedly look into.
Yes, and I was very happy with the way things were set up. I'm like, okay, this isn't what I was expecting, but you've set up an interesting mystery, and you've put some interesting plots in motion, and I like this. Okay, we're you caught me a little off guard, but I'm into it so far. So episode 2, we open at the sauna,
Yes.
where we learn that the driver and the nurse, what's her name? Like Miho, something like that.
Yes. Miho, yes.
They exchanged phone numbers at the end because he took her home at the end of last episode. They
Yeah.
exchanged phone numbers at the end of that ride, and his little Gibbon friend gets a match on a dating app to meet with a cat named Shiho.
Yes.
And then we go to a concert venue where Ryu, the lead singer of a new idol group called Mystery Kiss, who we hear their song in the first episode, but we don't see them.
Yeah, it's one of the things that's kind of dropped, then gives more explanation as the episodes go on.
Yes, yes. She confides in her skunk super friend Shun Iami that
Mhm.
Mystery Kiss has trouble getting popularity, and excuse me, that the two backup singers are contractually obligated to wear their masks, and then the band's manager tells the two masked girls to go sell the leftover merchandise outside the venue. Um, oh yeah, and then the kid who was at the concert, that's like a super fan, spends a bunch of money on lottery tickets in hopes of buying a bunch of their albums, and ends up getting a ride with the driver, telling him that he only has 2,000 yen, but that's not entirely true. Um, oh yeah, and then he asks the driver for his lucky numbers before he bails, and then he picks up the comedy duo Homo Sapiens, who we hear on the radio every once in a while.
Yes.
And one of them, the tall, he's like, I think a horse or something, he gets a call to appear on a daytime food show without his partner. And they drop them off at the like Japanese broadcasting thing or something. And
Yes, yes.
then the driver is soon held at gunpoint when Dubu enters the taxi. And that is where episode 2 ends.
Yes. So the multitude of things kind of building up, getting added on, and just all the particular things.
Yes, a lot happens in each episode.
Kind of the marvelous sort of thing of just little scenes happen, but they all interconnect in certain sort of ways that can leave you being like, "Oh my God, so much happened." When some of the people are just sort of like just this happened. What are you talking about?
Yeah, this is a show that if you're going to watch it, you have to pay attention. Like, you can't just kind of put this on and half pay attention to it. You need to focus because a lot of shit happens, like, very subtly.
Hmm.
Okay, so episode 3, we're back at the sauna again. Um, oh my god, a lot happens here. So Baboon Dude overhears a Yakuza boss talking on the phone with Dubu about the missing girl case. The driver secretly sends his distress signal because he's being held at gunpoint.
As you
Af-
know, it's kind of the obvious thing to do.
yes, after Dubu admits to having the dash camera SD card, the driver learns that Porcupine Gangster has been spreading false rumors about Dubu. The two cops that we met in the first episode pull them over, but only the older one gets out and tells them basically to fuck off because he's in league with the mobster who's in the back.
Uh, Bad luck.
Yes. We then see Dubu bury his revolver, which will become important next episode.
Yeah.
The driver is running late for his date with Shirakawa in the park. He swerves the taxi in front of a Puma video game developer in the streets, which again will become important in the next episode. At the park, the driver and Shirakawa watch the sunrise together and talk. After dropping off Shirakawa at the clinic, the driver meets with Baboon Dude
Yes.
and learns that Baboon Dude put false information into his profile on a dating app. Shirakawa contacts the driver saying that Goriki, who is that again? That's the doctor. There's so many fucking names in this show. Has gone missing, and the goat dude meets this girl he met on the dating app or at a bus stop,
Yes.
unaware that he is being tailed by Mystery Kiss's manager and a polar bear gangster.
Hmm.
Now, if you're not confused, it's going to get more confusing.
Yeah, just all the things.
Okay, so this episode actually, I'm going to say, kind of clears a few things up. Sort of.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
So Tanaka, who is the fellow that we saw walking and almost getting run over by the driver in the previous episode, recalls when he collected novelty erasers to fit in with his classmates. During third grade 16 years ago, he received a gray male cockatoo from his as a gift from his father. Later on, he used his father's credit card to purchase a rare eraser resembling a mandrill, eventually bidding 100,000 yen in an online auction. However, the eraser never arrived at his home, and his classmates moved on to playing soccer. When he started working at a video game company 4 years ago, he got addicted to a mobile game called Zuden. He eventually spent 5 million yen to collect super rare species. Upon finally acquiring the ultra rare dodo, Tanaka's celebration is short lived when the driver swerved his taxi in front of him and consequently drops his cell phone in a ditch. After getting his cell phone repaired and his data backup restored, Tanaka discovers that Zuden did not register the dodo before his data crashed. Wandering home, Tanaka falls into despair, heading to the park in order to bury his now dead cockatiel. He finds Dobu's revolver buried in the dirt. After passing, he sees. He sees other dude from the Homo sapiens, the thicker
Poor
dude.
gentleman.
Yes, the boar. I couldn't think of it. Wandering in the streets the next day, a vengeful Tanaka soon sees the driver going by in his taxi. Okay, so that's the first 4 episodes.
Yes.
So now, had you seen any of this previously?
It was the case of I remembered seeing advertisements years back when they were first showing off the series and whatnot from there. Excuse me a moment. Excuse and it looked intriguing, and I had a wish list on the site that I usually check out anime series from there, and it just sort of sat on my backlist. I knew little bits about the story, but never really dived into it. It was the case of I knew there was a little bit of mystery and whatnot to it, but it was still a bit of the case of silly little animals going through life and whatnot. And it's like, I'm not sure Paul would like this with either the animal sort of aspect to it or more so the case of looks cutesy, but has more of the uh, political slash other life sort of stuff inside of it to give it a bit more edge.
Okay, so I quite enjoyed the 4 episodes I watched.
It's understandable, I suppose, but I suppose there was still the taste of supposed either cutesy comedy sort of stuff going in and just like, oh, it's murder mystery stuff. Okay.
Yeah, I was a little like the first couple of minutes of watching it. I was like, oh wait, what? And then once I was like, oh, okay, I see what we're doing here. I was like,
Mm-hmm.
okay, like I'm willing to go with this. There's also
I
apparently
question
a
whether
movie.
I question whether or not that there be a similar sort of thing if we went with a different series. Because the one particular thing that came to my mind was, oh man, this is just another version of Agretzko with a different story.
I don't know what that means.
There was a super popular series a couple of years back. I'm not sure if they're continuing on with the series or if it's finished up, known as Agretzko. Similar sort of style, but instead it follows a female office worker going through all the particular things of life, of the trials and tribulations of the things that she does. And the case of she's a little red panda, that one of her favorite pastimes is going to a karaoke bar and singing ridiculously crazy screamo music in her voice.
Okay, I just looked it up. So this is like a comedy, though.
Yes, with that stuff, it starts to move more within comedy with little bits of troubles and tribulations of adult life within Japan and other sorts of things around the time.
Okay, interesting. I have never heard of this, but
It was one of the big popular things within the anime circle that when it popped out, it's like, oh, this is cute and amazing, but also has the bite of particular stuff that happens within it. It's like, I'll maybe watch an episode or two, which I
I would probably watch more of Odd Taxi though,
have.
because I'm like I want to know how this all wraps up.
Okay. Case of following the mystery and whatnot, there isn't exactly any sort of character that you enjoy within the story or um, other sort of thing that draws you in aside from the mystery of what's sort of going on.
I mean, like I like Hiroshi just
Hmm.
because I'm like I understand, dude. I understand.
Marvelous Grump character.
Yeah, and then there's the his friend, the little what is he like a baboon or
I'm not sure of the exact species of monkey, but a gibbon or other sort of
gibbon?
small scale monkey.
That's what he is. Yeah, the little gibbon dude. I'm like, okay, you're a pretty decent like comedic character. I'm like, okay, like okay. Although
Hmm.
he might, I, with the ending of episode 3, I'm like, how much longer is he gonna be around? Because like he seems like he's in a bad spot.
Yeah, there's the one case of what's supposedly going to happen to him and the consequences of what's going to happen when she finds out what he did.
Yeah, so I'm like, yeah, there's a couple of characters where I'm like, okay, like this is this is interesting. I like this. I also like the relationship between Hiroshi and Miho because I'm just like,
Hmm.
there's just something about that where I'm like, I just think they're, I just like that. Like I just there's something about it where I'm just like, I just yeah. I'm like
Hmm.
I'm just into that character arc.
Hmm. Was there any sort of concern with age differences? Because I don't know if it was specific with the little bits of notes, but it was cases that they mentioned with Hiroshi that he was in his early to late or early to mid 40s. especially with the Gibbon friend either around his age or around in his mid-30s, was going out with an 18-year-old.
So the Hiroshi thing, I'm like, whatever. He's 41 and the nurse is like 28. I'm like, everybody's a consenting adult. They should do what they want.
Mm,
The issue with his little Gibbon friend going for an 18-year-old, that's a little
that starts,
creepy.
that starts to push up a little against that. That seems legal.
I mean, technically, he's not breaking any law,
Yeah, with a lot of those
but
cases.
it's creepy.
Meh.
Like 28 and 41, I'm like, okay. At 28, you've gone to college, you've got a job, you probably live on your own, like you have your own life.
Mhm.
So like, whatever, I don't care. Do what you want. At 18, it's creepy that you're like a 41-year-old's hitting on you. I'm like, that's uh, not great. But yeah, I quite enjoyed the show for what it was.
I think on the very whole, with the whole episode, it's been fairly good for aligning all the particular stories. I think the only one particular one was they gave the one character episode 4 all to himself to introduce him, get him within the story from when he was introduced from episode 3. And the one case of, haha, I feel personally attacked, and case of subject matter that sort of went on within the story of that particular sort of stuff of yeah, that's sadly a thing that happens nowadays.
Yeah, so there's the whole thing of like him getting screwed out of the 100,000 yen on the online auction, and then his father beating him for using his credit card. Like, yeah, there's some fucked up stuff in there, but
Understanding sort of things, video game addiction, the gambling issue.
yes, yeah, yeah. There's some good. Yeah, I think it's also hard from like a Canadian perspective where like a lot of like most animation in the Western world is aimed at kids. Now, granted, that's changed a little in the last 15 to 20 years with things like Family Guy and like Bob's Burgers
Hmm.
and South Park, but still, on average, most animation that we get in North America is aimed at kids.
Hmm.
Whereas in Japan, that's not like they have animation for every age. Like it's not seen as a thing for kids. It's just that's a style of like how you make a show.
Hmm.
So I think that kind of like there's this thing like at least in my brain, I don't know if it's other people's, but where I'm like I see the animation and my initial thought is, oh, this will be like a fun show that everybody can watch, and then in this case, it's like, well, maybe not.
Yeah, maybe more adult oriented in certain sort of cases.
Yeah, but I quite liked it. I can't wait to watch the next episode.
See how things sort of go, see if they finish up the last couple episodes on there.
Yeah, and like the thing I like about this is it's 13 episodes, so I'm assuming that it has like a proper ending and everything.
Yeah, one of those sorts of cases. Um, Again, it also sort of kind of can depend. Some cases of certain series can have a certain amount of time, but then get an additional season afterwards, but they finished up their story. In other cases, they supposedly build up to getting a second season, but then it doesn't exactly pan out super well. So sometimes that kind of crashes and burns.
Oh yeah, I'm hoping that this isn't like a Twin Peaks situation.
No, I think on whole, especially with the little bits I looked into, it just seems to be the 13 episodes or so. I believe you mentioned or re-mentioned with there that there was a movie that was discussed from there, but I think it's also the case of its side media from there, nothing too much within the series.
Yeah,
Uh
it depicts events from the series, which take place after the series finale, but it seems to be like not like a direct sequel.
Something like that. So,
Yeah,
might not destroy the story too much in those sort of circumstances.
yeah. So I quite enjoyed this. I thought it was fun's not the right word, but I thought it was enjoyable.
Yeah, those sort of things. Kind of the murder mystery intrigue sort of case of enjoyment.
Yes, yeah, very much so. So, did you have anything else you wanted to add about this one?
Mm, I think at the very most, again, I'd probably follow your lead with continuing on with the series to at least finish it up and get the answers of how the rest of the series will go. But additionally, also the case of there's a multitude of other things to look into in my case for things that I'm intrigued in.
Yes, I'm not a huge anime fan, but if anybody in the comments below wants to recommend animes that are similar, I will check them out, provided that they are available on Crunchyroll.
Hmm.
I would be interested in something that's similar to this, though, for sure. I also you mentioned what was that? Kaiju number 8, which also sounds interesting, and I might have to check out.
Yes, with that one, it finished up its first season recently and was one of the ones that I've heard about, but just recently got into. That's a bit more action oriented with the particular things it does, with also having a strange splash of comedy that left me surprised when I watched the first couple of episodes.
Oh, interesting. Alrighty. Well, if there's nothing else, Dave, until next time, I've been Paul.
And I've been Dave.